Brought to you by...
Every story is built gradually, often starting with the edges, the first initial ideas that spark the creative flow. In a way, it kind of works like a puzzle. As we work on it more and more, incorporating more and more ideas, the larger picture begins to form. However, sometimes that larger picture isn't the scenic vista or the kitty cat playing with balls of yarn that is printed on the box. Sometimes the picture we form is a much darker one, giving shape to a horror that we are not yet ready to face. Hello friends, and welcome back to ETF. From an antique shop. As he begins assembling the pieces, he realizes the puzzle is far more sinister than it first appeared. The film is praised for its atmosphere, minimalist yet eerie storytelling, and effective use of suspense. It builds tension through its setting, sound design, and the unsettling realization that the puzzle seems to have a mind of its own. This concept taps into the fear of the unknown, turning a seemingly innocent activity into a supernatural and psychological experience. It won over 30 awards during its festival run, from 2014 to 2015, and was even recognized at prestigious Oscar-qualifying festivals like the Montreal World Film Festival, LA Shorts, and the Cleveland International Film Festival. Its success lies in its ability to deliver a gripping horror narrative, without relying on excessive dialogue or traditional jump scares, instead using psychological horror and mystery to create unease. Since The Jigsaw is a minimalistic horror short with a largely silent narrative, its effectiveness heavily relies on the performance of the lead actor. The film's central character, an elderly man, is portrayed with a nuanced and restrained performance, carrying the weight of the film almost entirely through body language and subtle reactions rather than dialogue. With no spoken lines, the protagonist must communicate his emotions, curiosity, intrigue, confusion, and ultimately fear, through his physicality. His hesitant movements when first examining the puzzle suggest mild suspicion, but as he becomes engrossed, his body language shifts into obsessive focus. The gradual change in posture, breathing, and hand movements reflect his growing fixation. This type of acting requires extreme precision. The way he leans in closer to the puzzle, or his increasing hesitation before placing the final pieces, shows an internal conflict. He senses something is wrong, but feels powerless to stop. The actor's facial expressions play a crucial role in conveying the psychological journey of the character. His initial amusement or neutrality subtly shifts to unease, as he realizes that the puzzle is revealing something beyond his control. His widening eyes, the tension in his jaw, and the slight tremble in his lips all contribute to the mounting horror. In horror films, overacting can break immersion, but The Jigsaw succeeds by keeping reactions grounded. The fear is internalized rather than externalized in exaggerated screams or sudden movements. This approach makes the horror feel more personal and inevitable. The protagonist's isolation is a key factor in the horror. The film provides no background on him, no family, no dialogue, no context, heightening his vulnerability. The actor's quiet, solitary presence makes the supernatural elements even more unsettling, because there is no one to validate or share his experience. His aged appearance also adds another layer of psychological horror. The elderly often face existential fears of mortality, fading relevance, and isolation. The puzzle becomes a metaphor for an unavoidable fate, and the actor's performance subtly conveys this through his resigned yet desperate reactions. In fact, the climax of the film hinges on the protagonist's reaction upon completing the puzzle. Without spoiling specifics, the way he processes the final revelation is crucial. Rather than over-the-top screaming or exaggerated horror, his performance leans into stunned realization. His body goes rigid. His breath halts, perhaps accepting what he sees, perhaps trapped in a state of disbelief. This restrained performance makes the horror more effective. Instead of feeding the audience a clear-cut reaction, it leaves room for interpretation. Does he understand his fate? Is he in denial? The ambiguity makes the moment more chilling. The visual design of the film plays another crucial part in building its eerie, psychological horror atmosphere. With minimal dialogue and a small, contained setting, the film relies heavily on its cinematography, lighting, color palette, and production design to create tension and unease. As the puzzle nears completion, the camera subtly pushes in, mirroring the protagonist being drawn into the mystery. This technique increases tension without relying on cheap jump scares. By keeping the camera restrained, the film creates a sense of inevitability, making the final reveal feel more impactful. The film is set primarily in a single room, which enhances the feel of confinement. The space feels like an elderly person's home, with simple furniture, warm tones, and a sense of quiet solitude. This creates an atmosphere of loneliness, making the supernatural elements feel even more intrusive. The table where the protagonist assembles the puzzle acts as the film's focal point. Its positioning, often shot from above or at an angle, emphasizes its importance, making it feel kind of like an altar, reinforcing the idea that the character is performing a sort of ritual act. The opening sequence, where he purchases the puzzle, is dimly lit and filled with objects that suggest history and forgotten pasts. This setting immediately signals to the audience that something is off, setting up the mystery of the puzzle's origins right from the rip. The small, intimate setting works to the film's advantage, forcing the audience to focus on every little detail, much like the protagonist does. Beyond being the central plot device of the film, the puzzle serves as a visual metaphor. The puzzle's image remains unclear until the final moments, mirroring how the protagonist, and us as the audience, slowly uncover the horror piece by piece. Assembling the puzzle is a visual representation of the protagonist's fate closing in on him. Every placed piece brings him closer to an unavoidable revelation. The puzzle forces both the protagonist and the viewer to stare, focus, and analyze its details, echoing the theme of obsession leading to horror. The puzzle is the perfect visual tool for psychological horror. It appears harmless, but holds an inescapable, terrifying truth. At its core, the Jigsaw operates as a minimalistic psychological horror story, using a seemingly mundane activity as a gateway into themes of fate, obsession, and the fragility of reality. The film builds its horror through quiet, methodic storytelling, rather than explicit violence or supernatural exposition, making its themes even more unsettling in my opinion. This central premise, that a simple jigsaw puzzle holds sinister, possibly supernatural powers, invokes a fear of the unknown. It's a very Lovecraftian concept. The puzzle functions as an object of existential dread, revealing an unsettling truth about the protagonist's reality. From a psychological standpoint, this aligns with the Freudian theory of the uncanny, where the familiar becomes disturbingly unfamiliar, triggering anxiety. This taps into a deep human fear, the idea that reality is not as stable as we believe. The protagonist's world is altered by the act of assembling a puzzle, like I said, reflecting a Lovecraftian horror element, knowledge that unravels rather than empowers. As the protagonist continues assembling the puzzle, he becomes increasingly fixated on completing it. The repetitive, almost ritualistic nature of the puzzle solving mirrors obsessive behavioral patterns. This could symbolize addiction, compulsion, and the dangers of curiosity taken too far. I think one of the most chilling implications of this film is its suggestion that fate is not only preordained, but actively revealing itself. The protagonist is not merely assembling an image, he is constructing his own destiny, piece by piece, with no power to alter its outcome. This plays into the existential dread of fatalism, the fear that our choices do not matter, and that we are merely acting out a script that has already been written. The more the protagonist progresses, the clearer it becomes that he was always meant to finish this puzzle, and the moment he does, he will face whatever horror it holds. This aligns with determinism, a concept in philosophy and psychology that suggests all events, including human actions, are predetermined by past causes. The film offers no escape for the protagonist, reinforcing the unsettling idea that his doom was set in motion long before he even picked up the puzzle in the first place. As the protagonist nears completion of the puzzle, his perception of reality begins to distort. This also suggests derealization, a dissociative state in which the world feels unreal or dreamlike. Horror often uses this effect to blur the line between hallucination and supernatural reality, creating psychological discomfort for both the character and the audience. This also ties into existential horror, where reality itself may be unreliable. The protagonist is confronted with the idea that his world is shaped not by his will, but by something external, an inescapable force dictating his fate. The puzzle, rather than being a mere game, becomes a revelation of a terrifying truth. His life was never truly his own. I would call the Jigsaw a sort of contained masterclass in psychological horror, utilizing a deceptively simple premise to explore deeper existential fears. Through themes of fate, obsession, and the breakdown of reality, the film taps into universal anxieties about control, knowledge, and the unknown. The puzzle serves as a metaphor for human existence. We constantly seek to complete our understanding of the world, only to realize that some knowledge brings not clarity, but terror. By the time the protagonist sees the full picture, it is already too late, just as perhaps it always was. Well, friends, that's going to be all for now. If you'd like to check out this film for yourself, I have linked it down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe for more content, and if you really want to help support this channel, we have something in the works that is going to give you the chance to do so, and get you some fun rewards in the process. Until next time, stay safe. Beware the next puzzle you pick up from a thrift or antique store. And as always, thanks for watching.